Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the Curiosity Theory for Women podcast. Now, last month, I read a story on Facebook. One of my friends on Facebook, Melissa Lynn, posted a story on her Facebook, and the picture she used was cool because it was like her. She's a great smile. She's like great energy, super confident, and she's like it's one of those selfies where she got your camera like that. She got this really great, beautiful, confident smile. But that wasn't the part that caught me. What caught me was, like, in parentheses, there was this thing bold, and it said, "At 28, I finally found the courage to leave my abusive ex-husband for good." And whether you've been treated well in life or you've experienced abuse and trauma, we all have experiences in life. Some of them are good and some of them are bad. The truth is, we all have a story to tell. We all have pain and scars inside of us. And it could be from like a bully in junior high school. You could have been the bully and you scarred yourself. Could be from parents, and it could be from an abusive ex. But everybody has a journey, and everybody's journey is unique. But there's something that's universal in all of us. It's something called the human spirit. And I think what the human spirit does is it supports us all to overcome even like the toughest challenges, the toughest things that we experience. And there's really terrible things that a lot of people face. And I hear a lot of stories every single day about people who've navigated like through the difficult times in life. And I think that when we hear stories that talk about this, that it inspires us, it fills us with hope, and it helps us push through our own obstacles to transform our own lives. And today's guest story, Melissa, her story captured me, and I hope it captures you. So let's bring her on. What's happening?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing really good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to step aside. I'm going to have you introduce yourself, and then tell your story, and then we'll come back and talk about it. Just to let everybody know, this is like what do they call it, a trigger warning?
Yes.
I'll be right back. Melissa, take.
Hi, thank you so much, Martin, for inviting me to come on and speak with your community. My name is Melissa Lynn. I am a high performance coach and published author. I love that I know Martin. We exchange each other's messages on Facebook. We have a lot of the same values and purposes in life. And I shared this story on Facebook one day. I'm always speaking from truth, speaking from authenticity. And I shared a message. I put a big trigger warning with it saying, that, hey, getting ready to share something. I know this could be difficult to hear. And it was about domestic violence, and shared about going through the journey and what that was like for me. And as a coach, I get asked very often, what was that final straw for you? Because going through divorce and going through domestic violence, there's all of these, am I going to do it? Is this the time? Am I done? And it was an evening of I have young children at home. So it was just a regular evening at home. My ex-husband decided that he wanted some sexy time, and, I wasn't having it. And he forcefully pinned me to the bed and did what he needed to do, told me that the beauty of being larger than me was he could have his way with me whenever he wanted. So in that moment, it was like, holy cow, like this is the worst that it's ever gotten. For me in that moment, it was worse than any of the physical violence, any of, all of that stuff. So I made a plan, and the plan was to start saving money. How as a mom who wasn't working, I was a full-time student. I had 2 little ones at home. What was I going to do, and how was I going to get out? And I didn't have the options to move back home, and I needed to come up with a plan. And so I just decided, start saving money. And I was in school, so I used my I used my student loan money. I used Pell Grant money to really start securing a place to live, and that was my out. And so I just, I was determined, and I was determined in that moment to make sure that the pattern didn't repeat. My children were down the hall when this event took place, and I needed to make sure that my daughter knew, what was required to be in a relationship, and I needed to make sure that my son knew how to properly, act as a man and how to treat women. So that was it. That was my moment to get out. And it's I say that it's history, it's part of my story, but it's definitely, it's gotten me to where I am today, but it didn't define me. So, I love to share that.
That's awesome. So I want to actually kind of unpack a few different things. So the
Yeah.
final thing is how did you, and I just want to make sure that we cover this, is how did you ultimately define yourself? And I know that's a
Mhm.
ongoing thing that you're going to do, and you're probably continuing to do that. So I want to definitely, finish with that crescendo, if you
Yeah.
will, right? But in the beginning, um, because this is a story, unfortunately, I've heard a lot, and I didn't hear it. I did not hear this story before my separation and divorce, so I didn't hear this story because wasn't conversation I was having.
Mhm.
But after I separated, what happened was I started to talk to women about how they experienced like their divorce, like what was it like. I
Yeah.
wanted to be empathetic to what Yvette was experiencing, right,
Mhm.
and have some degree of understanding. Um, and these are the story. A lot of these stories came out,
Mhm.
and and this is the thing, Melissa, they came out from people I never would have guessed.
Yeah.
Like you, and I didn't say like you like that, but that's what it was like. I get goosebumps just thinking about that. Is the people that I would never ever think of having an experience even close to that. They're like, yeah, this happened to me, that happened, all these things, and
Yeah.
so they all had the determination at some point, the determination to change, and that's what you were talking about.
Mhm.
So let's talk about determination, how that showed up for you inside of making that decision, if you don't mind. Let's unpack that.
Yeah. So, what I think that often doesn't get talked about is when you're in a situation of abuse of any kind, whether it's emotional or physical, before it ever gets to the physical state, there's a lot of emotional behind the scenes, beating you down. So through that process, it's like I went back so many times because I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have the self-esteem. I didn't have any self-value, self-worth. And so through that process and making the decision that I was going to take a different course, it was very much trying to reconnect to who I was. And it's so interesting. I got married at 18. So I was married at 18. I had my first child at 22. I was young. I was, in this marriage for 10 years. And it was like, oh my gosh, I moved out of my parents' house and got married. So
Yeah.
I had never experienced being alone. And I was so scared. It was one of those things it's not easy.
Like,
And
what do I
people don't
do,
talk
right?
about it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Like, what do I do? Like, what do I do?
Yeah.
I don't have this isn't part of the plan. This isn't part of the game plan. So,
Yeah.
I just want to just kind of break it up a little bit, because as I'm hearing you talk about this, this is the cool thing about stories, is that you can reflect in yourself. So as a
Mhm.
man, I'm reflecting that the words that I had in my life that I allowed to have chip away at me, but
Yeah.
I didn't know how to defend it. So it's kind of like, the analogy I use is, or the metaphor is, I can act like it was a little red brick, right? It's an old brick, and you just drop water on it. Eventually, that
Mhm.
brick's going to be gone, right? And we're the same way. So,
Yeah.
why don't we leave? Why don't we leave out of the house? Well, a lot of us live with parents, and not even abusive parents, but parents say what parents say, and we
Mhm.
get hurt every day. So, I think part of it, from my perspective, as far as what the man's perspective is that we learn to just deal with it. We learn to like accept
Yeah.
it. Is that what was happening with you?
Very much so.
Yeah.
I think it was just a continuation. My marriage was a continuation of how I felt about myself through
Oh,
childhood.
wow. Yeah.
And so it was very much it's a sense of comfort, and it was absolutely miserable. And that there's a lot of shame. So for me, I knew that to file for divorce, I was going to have to admit that my parents were right. I was young. I was
Yeah.
determined that I knew what I was doing. This is going to work. I've got it together. I don't need your opinion, and I had to admit it. I had to admit that I don't want to say that I made the biggest mistake because I got my children out of that marriage. So there's so many blessings that came with it, but it was very much also having having to admit that I just didn't know it all because,
Yeah.
at that age when I made the decision to get married, I definitely thought that I did. And I thought it was my escape. And it's so interesting. So I don't share a lot about this I got married. I rushed into getting married because he was in the Marine Corps and he was supposed to go active duty and he was supposed to move out of my hometown. So it was like, this is my escape route. Like, this is how I'm
Mhm.
going to get out. And so I did it. We got married and then we never moved. I'm now in my
And you
40s
never
and I
moved.
finally, well, I live in California now. So it took me until my 40s to get out, and I was able to do that myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's so interesting though. I think that things get said, through your entire life, and a lot of it isn't intentionally, meant to hurt you or to cause that internal scar, but it
Yeah.
does. It frames how we think about ourselves. It frames whether or not we take action or inaction. And
Yeah.
our thoughts really dictate everything that we do.
Yeah.
So very much, yes, it really it shapes who you are in that moment.
That's cool. Well, you said something that was really interesting. You said that that you had to admit that you were wrong, and that kind of made me think about like parenting, like me being a parent, and what conversations or what is the impact of me being a parent on my own children. Do they have the experience, or do they have the thought or the belief that they can't come to me, that if they say, hey dad, I was wrong, that there's gonna be shame, and there's gonna be they're gonna be made wrong, they're gonna be like told you and all that. And the problem with that is that I have done that with my kids. I
Mhm.
have actually done that with my
Yeah.
kids. My parents have done that with me. I don't know what your situation was at home. I would imagine that your parents probably had already done that with you. So you were actually you didn't have the, I don't know, you just didn't have enough permission in yourself or enough experience with your parents that what, I can actually go and be vulnerable and be open. Is that, yeah.
Yeah, it's true. And I've done this. So I did the same thing with my kids. I feel now I'm different with my
Yeah.
children through my own growth. I am trying to undo some of those things I did in the beginning.
Reparent, I call it.
Yes, yes, and it's so true because I think that there's a time and a place for the "I told you so."
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
My children are adults now, and I can have that conversation with them, and we can laugh about it now. But I make it very clear with my kids now that no matter what they do, I'm their ride or die. I don't care what
I
it is
love
that
it.
they've done. We're going to get through it. If you've made a bad decision, let me know. I'm here. I've got the experience. I've got the, we can
Yeah.
make it better. And so that's but I didn't have that growing up. There was so much shame around having to admit that I was wrong or what's going to happen. And so it's hard. It's hard when you're in those moments. Like, I knew in the very beginning I never should have even have gotten married. And
Mhm.
I knew as I was making the decision that I shouldn't be getting married, but we were so far into the process that I couldn't even imagine backing out, because I felt like I didn't have that support to say, oh my gosh, like, I'm getting ready to do something that I know I shouldn't do. Please help me get out. So it's now that's how I parent my children. Like, I don't care how close we are to pulling the trigger on something. If it's a no, it's a no. And that's my motto in life. If it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And that's how I make my
I love
decisions
that.
now.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
And what I said earlier when I was doing the introduction is that it's great that we can take people's stories, and they could be horrible stories, and I've heard some horrible stories
Yeah.
um, in my life, and take those and then share that, and so people can be inspired by themselves. And I think that we need to speak more about the steps that we took,
Mhm.
as people. What are the steps that you took to actually recover yourself, to rebuild yourself, to redefine yourself? And I think that we spend a lot of time just talking about the story over and over and over and
Yeah.
over. And the story's got drama, the story's got emotion, the story's going to
Mhm.
captivate.
Yeah.
In today's world, sometimes the stories of recovery don't have as much, maybe they don't have as much appeal because they just don't, and that's
Right.
that's unfortunate. But so how did you you talked about your daughter, so that your daughter knows and your son knows. How
Mhm.
did you get them, or how do you get them to know that this is how you treat your son? This is how you treat it. This is how you treat women. This is how you treat other people. And then
Yeah.
your daughter also, this is how you make sure you get treated. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. So I've been married twice. So I think this is important part of the story. When
Okay.
when I decided to get divorced the first time, I was Again, I was still very young. I was in my excuse me, I was in my 20s, and so I didn't want to be alone. How was I going to raise these kids on my own? So still very much from a fear standpoint, I needed to make decisions. So I got divorced, got married again, jumped right into a relationship that was different but also not healthy.
Uh-huh.
And so it was through that marriage, through that process, that I really started diving into what's going on? Why am I making these same repeated choices? And I kept hearing everybody around me was like, Melissa doesn't know how to choose men. Like, Melissa, she can't find, a man to save her life. And so it was all of these things. And then I got a lot of the, oh, she's such a hopeless romantic. Like she just chooses. And so it's so funny because that also became part of who I am today. So as I even now live my life, I still hear those voices in the back of my mind. And it's so for me now, it's super powerful because it's like, well, no, I made the decision the first time to get married because I wanted out of my hometown. Like I knew what I was, although I knew I shouldn't do it, I was making a decision that was in alignment with what I was trying to achieve. When I got married the second time, I also saw all the red flags going into it. But I also knew that I needed to make a decision in the moment that I thought was serving me best. And
Yeah.
so I did. And it was through that process that I really started like, okay, what's going on? Why am I so afraid to be alone? Why can't I feel like I can survive? Why do I feel like I need to be married? Why do I feel like there needs to be somebody in my life? And that's when I really started unpacking a lot of I was such a people pleaser. Like I say that I'm a recovering people pleaser because I think there's always that, it's buried deep in my subconscious, like always want to fire that first.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to make a decision that was right for me and to say no and to start standing in my truth was going to piss people off and it was going to hurt people's feelings. And through that process, it became very lonely because I lost friends. I lost, close connections with family because I was operating in a manner that they were used to me being, but I wasn't being true to me. I was being
Yeah.
who they needed me to be,
Yeah.
which was causing me to repeat some of these patterns through my life.
Wow, that's really cool. So I like how you said, the why. So you looked at the why, like why, and not like a victim, why is this happening to me, but why is this going on?
Yeah.
And then unpacked it. I think that's a really important part of it is
Mhm.
awareness. Is you actually got to unpack what's going on. So how did
Yeah.
you go through that process? What did you do in that process of unpacking? What was that like?
So it was definitely building confidence. So it was one of those things. I think, people don't just have confidence. I think when
Yeah.
we're young and we're little, we're very brave and we have confidence to do a lot of things. And then people start, injecting their opinions. And so I feel like I look at
Yes.
it as it's a confidence bank. Like you have to do something every day to pour into the bank of building
Interesting. Yeah.
confidence.
Yeah.
So it was, saying no when I needed to say no. It was deciding to put myself first. And some of those first things was deciding to file for divorce, deciding to go back to school, all of these different things. And so once I graduated from college and I was still in a world of what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. And so that's really, I want to say that's probably the number one building block is to start building the confidence, because from confidence you can overcome some of the fear, right? I don't think that you
Yeah.
ever become fearless. You learn to take action despite the fear. You learn to, what's causing the fear? How do I
Yeah,
take care of that?
confidence encourages acting in
Mhm.
spite of the fear. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I am
Yeah.
afraid, but I mean, you can't have confidence. You can't have confidence if you're not up to something, because
Hmm.
confidence
Yeah.
requires you to be up to something to need it,
Right.
right? And courage requires fear in order to be expressed. So, I think a lot of times people try to run from that. Like, I just want everything to be perfect and calm. And
Hmm.
so the balance then is just trying to keep, all these plates up in the air, which is just an illusion,
Right.
versus like, being willing to step in and go, yeah, life is like, it's tough. It's uncertain. It's,
Hmm.
it's going to require me to work hard. That's just the way it is. I
Yeah.
might as well just accept that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true, and I feel we compare ourselves to other people. So,
Yeah.
at that age, I was like, "Oh gosh, like these my peers, they're at a completely different place in their life. So then for me, it was very much like, so then I was hating on myself. I was judging myself. I was still dealing with through my second marriage, the beginning part of that, I was still trying to clean up my first marriage and, having the restraining orders in place and fighting for custody of my kids, in that process of still trying to make sure they were safe and
Yeah.
also still trying to really connect to who I was. And in those early days, it wasn't easy. I became such an emotional eater. So in a year, I gained 115 pounds. I didn't know how to deal
You're
with
tiny.
the stress of it.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to, so I ate, because that's what gave me peace in the moment. And it's because, I know now, it's so funny. Last week I was doing an interview and I was like, I think that my entire life, maybe up until right now, where I'm able to say, like, I provide everything for myself. I feel very safe, very secure in my, my environment, in my life. I don't think I ever had that in the past. So it's interesting to say that my parents were great. I had a good childhood, but even it's an inside feeling to be able to say that I really felt safe. So I love the fact that now I can say that's a huge part of those decisions that I was making. And a lot of that is based off of, the things that were going on. So knowing and acknowledging that I was eating my feelings and having to say, dang, I gained 115 pounds in a year. What do I do now? Why am I doing this? What's wrong with me? Why do I? And so it was repeating that cycle because I didn't have the confidence. I didn't have that self-worth. I didn't have that self-esteem. I thought everything of me was being a mother and being tied to being married. I thought I was a good wife. Why is this not working out? And it was all because I was connected to everybody else, but I was not connected to myself.
That's a really great thing. I'm going to kind of go and unpack what you said. And Elena said that some emotions we experience are epigenetic, and that that we gain weight by eating. I think she says out emotions, but I think she means eating our emotions. Yeah. And I thought about that and confidence. So what is confidence? Like we're going through life and we'd like to experience confidence. And what I realized is that when I was younger, I had a lot of energy. That I got a lot of energy. And I did not have a mentor. Like, you're a mentor as well, and you coach people. So do I. I didn't have a coach or a mentor that could take my energy and say, "Hey, Martine, cool energy, keep it coming. Why don't you run it this way, or like that? I don't like that one. Or how about this way? Okay, great." But someone that could give me ideas of how to take my energy and use it so that not only it's productive, but that I actually enjoy it. Because, someone can tell you what to do with your energy and you go, okay, go do that. But if it's not something you enjoy or you want, or it's aligned with what you believe in, what you want to create, it's just, you're just being programmed by somebody else to do something that they want you to do. So that's the first part. The second part is that, so what I did is I saw that when I ate, it actually calmed my body down, and it calmed my brain down a little bit. So basically what I was doing is I was just drugging myself to, just to be in the state that people wanted me to be in. Yeah. Like and I found that was a functional state I could accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. It got a little harder, but I just didn't get as much shit from people, if you will. Right.
Yeah. Well, so when we eat, there is a chemical balance where, so you eat, because I do a lot of coaching on emotional eating. And so
you have that book. It's where your book is.
Yeah. So you have the need to eat. It's there. The urge is there. You can't stop thinking about the food because you have so much else. It's your escape. So what are you choosing to escape to? For me, it was food. So then I would eat. You get the chemical reaction, which is a high, a lot of you get the feel good hormones. For me at the time, I didn't care. And to go and exercise. Yes, you can. I know now you can get those hormones by doing other things. You get that chemical release and it lowers the anxiety. It lowers the depression. But for me in the moment, food did that. Food provided me that instant need, the instant gratification to make me feel better. And the more I enjoyed that moment of eating, the more I ate. And so it was very much made it easier to deal with people, right? Like I said, being a people pleaser, I would do these things for other people that I did not want to do. And I was hating myself for agreeing and doing these things. And so then I would go and eat, because eating was taking care of me. Eating was
Yeah.
for me in that moment, it was definitely pouring into me. And it was how I was able to cope with all of these different transitions that I was going through in my life.
Yeah, it's eating is such a fundamental need. It's like
Mhm.
at least you're meeting a survival need. So at least, at least I'm alive. And how do I prove I'm alive? Because I'm doing this act. And if
Mhm.
I can't get satisfaction, or I can't feel good in these other areas of my life, these, when you think about, Maslow's hierarchy, if I'm not going to be able to meet a need that I have in these higher areas right now, at least I can meet this fundamental need. And
Mhm.
I'm kind of making this up because I'm hearing what you're saying. I'm trying to like vibe off what you're saying, because I'm a jazz musician. 'Cause that's what we do, right? But so I don't know if any of this is true. So please, by all means, go. No, it's not like that, Martine. So it's like, so what we're doing is we're using the food maybe just to at least to have some degree of connection with
Mhm.
ourselves. At least I can have that connection. So as you think about myself and how I'm eating, I think, yeah, that's actually what I think. That's actually what I do. What I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's something you can control. So even though it's not
Yeah.
beneficial and it's not in alignment with the life you're trying to build, it is the one thing that I like for me, speaking for myself, I was able to control it.
Yeah.
So although it gets to a point, I think in the emotional eating cycle that, a lot of times people felt out of control, but I was still able to decide for myself, you know what? F this, I'm going to eat this food and it's going to feel so good. And I would make that decision. And it was a way that I could connect and I could show up for myself because I didn't have any other coping tools at that time.
So was the whole thing with eating part of your healing as well?
It was so, and it's so interesting because I went from using food as my escape to using exercise as my escape. So I went
Okay.
from being, extremely overweight, knowing that I needed to lose this weight. I was an athlete in school. So it was like, okay, I know that I've got this ability to be this athlete. So
Yeah.
then it was like, I'm going to go run. So I started running and I started running and I started running. So then I was doing, long distance running, training for marathons, all of this stuff. And I was so hyper focused on the exercise aspect of it, and I was controlling what I was eating, that yes, it was giving me the losing weight results that I was looking for, but I was still not free. I was still not connected to my body. I was still not connected to myself because even in those moments, I was the most fit that I had ever been. Why was I still not happy? Like that was the one thing I thought I needed to do was to lose weight because that was going to fix what was wrong with me
Yeah.
was to lose this weight, then it would fix my marriage, all of this stuff. And it had nothing to do with any of it because it still didn't make me happy. So it's
Yeah.
just interesting. I replaced one thing with another. And even though, eating better and working out was what I needed to become healthy so that I was alive to see my children grow up,
Yeah.
it was also not serving myself and it was causing a lot of additional damage.
Yeah. Elena said, thanks for posting all this stuff, Elena. She said that, you became inspired. So I think I don't know that you talked about that yet, how you became inspired. But how did you finally get touched, by spirit? How did you finally
Mhm.
be inspired to no longer use exercise as kind of like the crutch and food as the crutch, and then find a balance? How did you come to that?
So I went to a women's conference.
Mhm.
I had never been to a personal development event in my life. I didn't even know what this thing called personal development was. I think I heard of Tony Robbins at one time.
Yes.
And so I was like, what, I'm going to go do this. I had a friend who was going, she invited me to go and I went and I couldn't get enough. So it was one conference and it was Lori Harder. I love Lori Harder. I went to one conference and then it was just like every podcast, every book I could get a hold of, every event I could go to, how do I feel so good taking in all of this information? So then that's really when I started making decisions that were in alignment for myself. And then
Yeah.
that's also how I discovered my passion in coaching and helping other people because that was the missing link for me. I had done therapy before, I had done all of these things, but it wasn't what I needed. And so by going to these events, by learning what coaching was, by investing in coaching, all of this stuff, it was very much, okay, now I'm taking care of me, who I am. And really, it was a discovery process. And I was excited and I was curious. So I dove in.
That's so cool. So that became your food is to feel inside yourself. So kind of, I
Yeah.
think what the metaphor is that is that we spend so much time trying to get external stimulus to give us something, versus like, I'm going to build a fire inside of here. Like
Yeah.
my avatar for myself this year is fire. And it's like, I would like turn this thing on fire, this guy over here on fire.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is just so that that the power comes from within, that I'm not trying to pull power from any external, from other people. So I'm not dependent on that. And it's not a matter of wanting to, like, not depending on people. It's a matter of like going, I have this guy, and this is where I want to pull the energy from. Right. And so you had that for you, it sounds like, and you just wanted to keep reading and just knowing stuff.
Yeah. And so, it was really connecting to my why. I think that, I know a lot of times we talk about our why, what's our why? And a lot of times I was, it's my children. My children are my why. They're the reason why I do everything, but it's deeper than that. And so I didn't learn that until later. And
That's
I love
huge.
that you
Let's
say,
stop
like,
right there real quick. I'm going to just remember your thought. It's really, really important. A lot of people will stop at their children. Like, why do you do this? Why do you do this? Because of my kids. That's awesome. But are you willing to go deeper?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Yeah. And I love that you bring up the idea of the fire within, right? And so when I work with clients, I get asked a lot, well, how do you do New Year's resolutions? Like, Melissa, how do you stay on track? Do you pick a word of the year? And I really love the idea and the concept of, I think it's a good tool for people to reach milestones and to achieve goals. But I also feel that there's a part of that, it's about lighting that fire under your feet, lighting that fire to get you going. And I believe in lighting the fire within. And so when you connect to your why and you really know that your purpose in life and your direction, you're allowed to then tap inward. So for me, it's more about winning at life versus like winning the year, right? And so I love that you bring that up, because that is very much how every year when, New Year comes, we're kicking off new things. I always tap into, okay, what's my why? What is my purpose? Because I also believe those things change as you evolve, as you change, as you grow. Some of those things also change as you do.
Yeah, 100%. That's really cool. Yeah, I had a thought, but I want you to keep vamping. I was thinking about something you said, but it left me. So I'm going to let that. I'm just not going to try to go find it. Well, okay. So it's quality. So let's kind of like talk real quick about that, because I talked about it, you talked about it. So, but let's talk about it just a little bit more. So in the beginning of the year, one of the things I learned to do is create qualities. Look at qualities. Like, what are the qualities I want to put inside myself? And how I did that is I would look at other people and I go, well, I like that about them. And Elena talks a lot about that, because I talk a lot to Elena, and who keeps commenting here. Is that you got to find balance. You got to find the with the good, it comes the bad. And she talks about infatuation. So you have like this infatuation with somebody, and you're looking at somebody and you're saying, oh, I really like that about them. And what I learned to do is I learned to pick out the quality that I liked about them. Like, you could take different people, and you can even take somebody that most people don't like, and you can say, there's a quality that person has that I would like more of that quality. And that's one of the things that we do in Men's Breakthrough. Now, this is the Curiosity Theory for Women. This is the podcast for that, and this is for that group. But if there's any men watching, I want you to know, I'm committed to working with men, but I can't work with men if I don't know what's going on with women. Who am what am I just going to say? All right, man, let's just go do what we want to do. And, it's like, no, it's not. If what we're going to do is learn to walk alongside each other and empower each other and support each other and be inspired by each other and love each other and not think that I'm the leader, so you walk behind me and all that other stuff, this old way of doing things. So if we're going to walk next to each other, we've got to understand each other. We've got to talk to each other. We've got to connect. We've got to know what the whys are. And what we need to do is we need to take responsibility for the actions that we did. When I hear your story and I hear about a man that, and I didn't hear all the details, but that's not what's important. What's important is that people abuse other people, and we need to take responsibility and stop doing that. So it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean, I'm not talking to the people that only hit people. I'm not like, I'm talking to the person that says something that's unkind, that uses, violent communication on somebody. Case in point is that my son showed up yesterday. I was doing a interview or something. I was doing a podcast or some interview or something yesterday, and my son walks in, and what I have is I'm at Ingrid's house right now, but in my house, I have like a curtain, and that goes out to the balcony. And so I usually lock that door and I put the curtain in. That's where I do my podcast. So it's like my backdrop. Well, I didn't have that. Oh no, I was actually doing a coaching call, and my son walked in. So I snapped at him, like, hey, you're supposed to use the other door when you come in when this blah, blah, blah. And I didn't say it very nice. And as soon as I got off my coaching call, I went in and I said, hey, I apologize for speaking to you that way. Did that bother you? He's like, no, that didn't bother me. I said, okay, cool, but I apologize anyways. And about 5 or 10 minutes later, he comes and he says, you know what, that did bother me. I didn't realize it, but it just bothered me just a little bit. So thanks for apologizing, Dad. Like that. And it's just, it's even those little things. You don't have to yell at somebody and scream at somebody and, just say really horrible things to them. It's the little drops that also we need to look out for.
Yeah, I love that you say that, because oftentimes people won't really remember exactly what you said, but they remember how what you said made them feel. So
Yeah.
it's that feeling, right? It's that feeling that people take with them through the years. And so, coaching men and women's coaching, it does come together, because when you partner up with somebody, you're partnering up with their life experiences. And so I don't want to say it's their baggage, right? But it's their experience that they've had in life. You're partnering up with that also. So it's realizing that there's certain things that the feelings is what people bank, and good feelings, bad feelings, that's really how oftentimes we make our decisions and we move forward. So by realizing how little things, even though you think like, okay, well, it wasn't that bad. What I said wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
It's that feeling that the other person's going to get. And so I think it's a beautiful thing with parenting, because I've had to do the same thing too. I still apologize to my children for the things that I said in the past that I didn't realize, could have caused some issues for them, because now I'm like, oh my gosh, like I see that. And so, but I can have that conversation with them, and I can tell them like, all I know is I did the best I could with what I had in that moment, because I've also learned not to judge myself for that, or not to hate on myself, and not to beat myself up, because it's just that journey in life, and life is a journey, and it's not always great, and it's not always sunshine and rainbows. And, and through the coaching and through personal development, I think it's really important to realize that you're going to have moments and you're going to have days where it's just going to suck, because there are things that happen. But yet, how do you show up? You control how you show up in life. And so, that's, I think, just one of the biggest things. And with parenting, I'm able to tell my kids like, hey, I'm really sorry. Or I also know now my needs. I can say, I can't talk right now. Just give me 5 minutes. I need to have a moment to like collect myself before we go there. And they also know like, okay, let's go get mom a coffee. Then we'll have this conversation.
And then she'll listen.
Yeah.
That's so great. We use the word sorry, we use that word. And I think that word has, for lack of a better word, a wrong, it's connected wrong to our actions. Good morning, Veronica. It's connected incorrectly and wrong to our actions, because what I believe so many people do is they'll say, I'm sorry for what I did. Yeah. I'm sorry that I did that. And then like, as if it's over, yeah, great. You have an awareness of what you did. And I'm not looking to say, don't feel bad about it. I'm not saying don't feel bad or don't feel good about it. It's what you could do, what the thing to do. And I tell this to men all the time when we talk about this, is like, well, I apologize to her. Yeah. But is her experience, did you clean up her experience? Yeah. Like you're cleaning up your experience of what happened. Are you cleaning up her experience of what happened? So you could be abusive. Well, you know what? I used to be really mean. I used to be abusive. Okay, got it. So did you clean it up with the people that you abused? Did you go back and, did you go back and clean it up? Because they could have some residue for it. They can have something. It might not be complete for them. So that's the thing. And are you getting help for it? Don't do it anymore and get help for it. and go clean it up. That's that's kind of life. That's it. Like, you screwed up. You did some stuff that you shouldn't have done. You treated people the way you shouldn't have treated them. I'm not mad at you. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying, like, if what you want to do is move forward, then stop doing that. Stop the action, learn a better action and go clean up the mess you made.
Yeah. And I think that's the key for being sorry. It's one thing to say it, but do your actions align with the words, right? And so I feel like, as raising, and I go back to my kids a lot because I'm raising a son who is going to go off into this world and interact with women. So how do I do that? And I can't teach him how to be a man. I don't know all the man things. Like, I also know what my limitations are, but what I can teach him is how to treat women, like how to treat yourself so that you're honoring women. And so oftentimes I think a lot of it comes down to what people have going on inside. And it's the same with my daughter, being able to build her confidence and her self-worth and her love for herself and her ability to know that she is whole and complete just as she is. And as you go out into the world and you connect with people and you meet people, whether it's, a romantic relationship or it's friendships, business, whatever that is, whoever you're connecting with, they just add on to the great life that you already have. So being able to really, build them from the inside out so that when they go out into the world, they're really doing what they need to do to showing up as a good human. And, it's being able to, like I said, know my limitations and also ask for help, with my son, teaching him how to be a man, being able to call in my father to help him, or my brother, or some of, the men that are in my life, because they are also now role models for him. And,
awesome.
And now he works for the police department. So he's got a bunch of role models, but it's one of those things. Well, not quite yet. He's not 21 yet, but so he's also learning some of those things that I couldn't teach him. He's learning from other people, but I know now, though, that I instilled the values in him. So he's able to take from other people what serves him and what aligns with his values and his goals in life. And he's able to leave what doesn't, because there's also good and bad in every person.
Absolutely. If your son was around when your first husband was doing that, that's an experience. He'll have that experience. Mm-hmm. The way I look at it is, he'll have that experience. He'll have that option. Yeah. Because he saw it. So if I was around somebody that was abusive and I'm saying I'm not abusive, well, in this file cabinet in here, in this hard drive, is how to be abusive, how to get away with it, how to be a jerk, how to be that. That's in here. So it's what's possible. I talk about some of the stuff that I talk about with Elena. She says, you're not going to have the awesome guy without having the terrible guy. You have to have them both. You need the contrast. They both show up together. So if you're like, I'm just trying to be a good man, well, what are you saying? I'm also trying to, like, not be a bad man, which means that the bad man is probably inside of you as well. And it's learning to work off what you said, like your values, your virtues, the things that you're committed to. So this is how I'm committed as a man. This is how I'm committed as a woman to be. These are the qualities I want. These are the values and the virtues that I'm going to operate. This is how I'm going to govern myself. I call it governance. The governance of me is going to be this, and it's going to include this. And so that's how I'm going to walk. And doesn't mean I'm going to walk it every day. And I got to remind myself constantly. But eventually then it becomes that thought then becomes, a pattern, and then it becomes part of my, personal, my personality, then my personal reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did Veronica say? She said, my dad witnessed his dad abusing his mom, and he became just like his dad. So I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I'll tell you, because it's actually about me being abusive. I guess I will tell you the whole story. So one day my son got in trouble. We were at a friend's house, my sister's house, and we were hanging out. And my son, he was little. He was really little, probably 8 or 9 or so. And he pulled his pants down and showed his cousin his pee-pee, and I was like, I just got really upset by that. I really got triggered. And so I took him home, and it's like, I'm taking you home from the party. And on the way home, I was like yelling at him. I was like, being the jerky dad. I was yelling at him, and I could see I was building this fear. And in my head, I knew what I was doing. Like, I'm trying to get him scared. I want him, and the reason for my wanting him to be scared is so his behavior changed. So the intention of what I wanted to do was a good intention. The strategy was horrible. The strategy is what sucked. What I did was what sucked. It's what I learned. So I'm not justifying it at all. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm simply going through the process. So I remember yelling at him. I get him home, and then I take the belt out and I hit him, and then I hit him again. And the crazy thing is, after I spanked him with the belt once and I spanked him the second time, I realized that I was now being relieved of the energy that I had. I had that awareness. Like, oh my God, I just relieved myself of whatever pain I was going through in this situation. That probably, Melissa, has nothing to do with the situation.
Right.
Not even probably, has nothing to do with the situation at all. So I'm taking out my frustration by abusing my own child, by spanking my own child. And in that moment, I was a kid, and I looked up, and I could see I became a kid right there. I apologized to my son. I gave him a hug. I cried. I'm so sorry. I will never, ever touch you again. I will never, ever spank you again. I just, that was over. That part of life was done. Yeah. And then I looked up. I was kind of like looking up, because reflecting, and all I could see is my father doing that to me, like how he would spank me. And my father did not hold back. He never apologized. He went full force. My father used to actually, what he would do, and he didn't do it a lot, but he did this a couple times. My dad was a carpenter. So you know what a 2x4 looks like, right? He would take a 2x4, go to the saw, and you'd hear this. You'd hear this as a kid. He's making something to hit us with. So you hear the saw in the garage going out, and it goes through the saw, and he cuts off a piece, the end of the side of the thing, and that's what he would hit us with. And that was the best he knew. He's the best he knew to try to correct our behavior. And it's not the fact that that correcting our kids' behavior, our behavior, letting our spouses know, our girlfriends and boyfriends know, our friends know that excuse me, I just got triggered by something. I got caught by something. That those ways of acting are going to maybe be better for you. Like, not pulling your pants down is going to be that's kind of like a better thing to do, not to do that, and find a way to correct the behavior. But what we do is we find these strategies, and we have these ways that come from our past and come from what we've seen that will come out, and those are completely unconscious.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I remember the first time I hit my daughter when she was young, and the look that she gave me, it broke me. And so in that moment, I also learned for myself the same thing, that I spanked her out of frustration, because I didn't know what else to do, and I was trying to get her to change. So when I spanked her, and then that look that she gave me, in that moment, I realized that I was killing her spirit. Because I think oftentimes too, as parents, we want our children to behave in a certain way, but we also want our children to become them, discover who they are. We want them to learn and to evolve and to become their own person, and not become the people pleasers like I learned to do. So it was in that moment, how do I correct my daughter going forward? And the funny is, like, I can say now that I learned that the easiest way to get my daughter to react or to respond was to take her shoes away. And when I say that, people are like, you took your daughter's shoes away? And I'm like, okay, my child had so many shoes for every outfit. And I knew what, because she laid her clothes out the night before, and I knew the shoes that she wanted to wear. And I could get my daughter to align with what she needed to do and her responsibilities if the shoes became the topic of conversation. So then it was teaching, like, okay, if you want these shoes, you want to wear this, what do you need to do to be able to get there? And so it was also teaching her the process of, okay, well, if I'm going to lose shoes as a consequence, then what do I need to do to take action to be able to keep those shoes? So it was allowing her to see both sides of that. She knew what the consequence was going to be. And so the same, became the same thing with my son since he was younger. I would take his books away, and people think that I'm absolutely crazy because I say that. Parents want their children to read. My son loved to read, and he would choose reading over homework. He would choose reading over showering or brushing his teeth. And so sometimes I had to take that book, and they're adults now and we can laugh about it, but it's you do want to teach children to make the right choice, but sometimes it's the right choice that's in alignment with the goals that they're trying to achieve. And if the goal is to wear the shoes or the goal is to read that book, what choice do I need to do to achieve that goal? And so now as adults, they're able to say like, okay, this is my goal. This is what I'm trying to achieve. What do I need to do that aligns with getting to that result? And
I love that. Okay. So, oh, wow. That's really cool. So that made me think of is evolution, like the concept of evolution, like we evolve. So if I can take my father and I say, this is what he did, and his father did what he did, all that. And then we take what Veronica said, his dad, her dad witnessed her dad abusing her mom. And so it moves down like the idea of beating your kids or spanking your kids or corporal punishment, what do we call it, whatever. There was never 100 years ago, maybe even 50 or 60 years ago, there was nobody ever said anything about that. Like, that's like the way we do it, and the result is, we're still alive. I mean, it's like, that's the result, right? So we are still alive. But the evolution then becomes of like, how do you take that information? How do you take what happened with you and then build from that? Like, how do I take how I was treated and take the good stuff from that, build off of that, keep building myself off of that, and then taking the stuff that was not so good, that I would like to not do that to my own children, and build off of that. The benefit of that is that we learn new ways to communicate. That's really the benefit. So if we're curious, we're going to have to go, that's just how you have to do it. There's not another way to do that other than this, I believe, is we're going to have to be curious and go, okay, well, how do I do that? You're going to have to be curious about it and create a new way of communicating with your children that doesn't include the way that you were communicated. It doesn't include shame. It doesn't include judgment. This is okay. Do I do that? Yeah, I do that because it's part of how I speak, and I'm working on that. I'm working on changing the way I speak. And in the meantime, it's going to slip up. In the meantime, I'm going to say stupid things. In the meantime, I'm going to tell my kid something and I have to go back and clean it up. That's just the way it is. That's the way life is. It's not life. I don't think is about being perfect. I think a lot of it is growing. And the title of the show is In Making Peace with Me. It's in making peace with yourself, right? Ultimately is what you said you did, making peace with yourself, and then being able to go and then, and then have that be spread out, have that be like a wave that your son, I'm saying this out loud, like your son then becomes the kind of police officer that spreads what he learned from his mother. He can discern that from what he learned from his father, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I love the fact that you bring up it's definitely not about being perfect. And I know that now, right? That's part of making peace with me, is knowing that I'm not perfect. And it's also knowing that it's okay to say, I made a bad choice. Like, I messed up. I said the wrong thing. And so that's also, I think, the beautiful thing about parenting now and reparenting some of my past things with my children and reparenting myself, because a lot of it is being able to say to my child, like, hey, I'm sorry, that came out wrong. That's not exactly what I was trying to say. This is what I'm trying to get across. And I'm okay saying that. And I think that it teaches our children, it teaches people who hear us that it is okay if you do say the wrong thing. Now you can communicate better and you can say it differently. And like you said, clean up the past. You got to clean up those things that you said. And it's cleaning up the feeling that people also get. So when I'm having these conversations with my kids, I'm able to say like, hey, how did that feel for you? Like, I know that came out wrong. Yeah. What does that bring up for you? And how can I help? Like, how can I help you now? Let's talk about this, because I also know that's what I needed. That's what I needed when I was young. I needed to be able to speak freely, speak what was on my mind, share who I was without fear of, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen by me saying this? Yeah. And I also know that's how I create that for my children going forward, because I want them to speak their mind. I don't want them to be fearful and start making these choices that then keeps the pattern, right? Like I want to break the cycle with me. I don't want that to go through to my children going forward.
Yeah. And the thing is also, and I don't think you're saying this, but I think it's really, really important to say that it doesn't mean that your kids are now going to be exonerated from pain and suffering and hard
Right.
work and
Yeah.
all that stuff. And they're going to have a new version. They're going to have guess what? You get a new evolved version of something, but likely it's going to be something that you and I never even thought about or even considered. It's like, I would never even think about that. It's like if my father's way of correcting my behavior was to spank me, and then I have a different way. And my father did this when I had children. He said, like, man, you do such a better job at being a dad than I did.
Mhm.
And I watch Ingrid communicate. She tells me how she was a mom. And I'm like, oh my God, I never thought about that one. She talks about how, like, when her son threw a fit at this, it's like how she corrected it. I'm like, man, I would have never thought of that way to do it, and that's such an easy, better way that I would have done it. And what we do is we build and we learn and we teach and basically just moving our human race forward as better human beings, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and I love that you say that too, because it's like, it's really coming to a place where you can say, I swiped my human card. Like, whether it was good or bad, I'm human and I swiped my human card, and that's what the result of that was, and I'm going to move forward. And I really feel, making peace with myself, and for everybody listening, it's so important to move forward, to not get stuck in those bad decisions or those things that have happened to us through our journey. And, because we keep going and we want to be able to, and I'm not saying like you push it down, right? Like, you've got to go through it. You've got to, you've got to heal it. You've got to move through it, but you don't want to get stuck there. Like, don't put an anchor down in that moment of your life that was not pleasant. You've got to be able to move through that and move on to the next, because, life keeps going. You keep evolving, you keep growing, you keep learning. And, I think it's a beautiful process, and
That's
not
right.
every day is pleasant, but
That's awesome.
it's fun though.
Absolutely. Life is definitely an adventure.
Mhm.
So, one of the things, Melissa, is that, you and I both coach people, we both coach, and what I want to do is share with people that are watching this podcast is share with people, like, there's all kinds of different ways to coach people. There's all kinds of people that have different approaches, to have different experiences. Like, there's things I can coach. There's things that Melissa can coach. We just coach different things,
Mhm.
and maybe we coach the same thing. So let's say we coached exactly the same thing. I don't think we
Yeah.
do, but let's say we did. Well, there's people that are going to love to be coached by Melissa, and there's people that are going to love to be coached by me. So that being said, I want you to share your information, like how people could work with you if they want to work with you, and then before that, actually after that, I'll share with you how they can work with me if they want to as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. So you can reach out to me here on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I am Melissa Lynn, and my company is Melissa Lynn Coaching and Consulting. I would love to speak with your community. I'd love to support you also, because you're right. I don't believe in competition. We are not competition for each other. We are here to lift and inspire and to move
Yeah.
people forward. And I think that your style is different than my style, and yet our goal is the same. Our goal is to help people live their best lives and to thrive and to be happy and healthy. So yeah, thank you for letting me share that.
You bet. Happy to have you do that. Elena, she's a coach. She's actually a global coach. She's a trainer as well for John Demartini. It's like amazing. Like, the people that are in the community are amazing. And she has a way of looking at life. And I go to her to, like, how do I unpack this idea? And so I go to her. So that's the value of having a community, is because you can go and unpack stuff with people. Veronica Mendez, who's commented a few times. Her and her husband have a healing modality that's amazing. They actually can sense the energy, and it's in a sense, it's like they just pull it out of you. And I've worked with them several times, and I would go in with, like, this is something I'm up against. This is something I'm up against. And after working with them, I don't even remember what the thing is. They pull it out so well that I don't even remember what the thing is I was up against is. Like, I'm like,
I love that.
what did I come here for? I know I feel better. I know it's gone, but because things thing memory that we have in ourselves, hurt feelings and all those things, that stuff lives inside of us. It lives inside of us. It's got to be stored somewhere. Like if you have a bad memory, think about that, right? Melissa, tell me, if you have a bad memory, correct me if I'm wrong, please. If you have a bad memory, where does it live? It lives somewhere. It's got to live in here. You got your body and you got your mind, and that's where it lives. That's why you get sick to your stomach. That's why when you feel bad about a situation, you feel it in your gut, or you feel it in your leg, or you feel it in your knee, or worse off, you get cancer. Worse off, you get a disease, and you express it that way, because emotions and energy and memory and all that stuff has got to express itself. You can hide it a little bit. You got a hard drive that'll take some of it, but eventually that hard drive is going to say, no, it's enough of that. I need to get it out of me. And cancer, for some, in some instances, some believe that that's the way they try to get it out of you. What do you think about, what's your thoughts on that real quick?
I agree with that. I feel like the energy, we can get the energy out of us. We can move through the energy. The memory is always going to be there. And for me, it's very much changing my relationship with the memory, changing my relationship with those events in life, because it's my relationship with the memory and it's my relationship with the things of my past that are going to create my future. So by working through it and going through the energy and processing through, I believe in moving your body, right? Like getting through it. And then also, how am I going to, it's not going to go away. It doesn't just one day magically disappear. It's always going to be there. But
that thing happened.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of people think sometimes that, oh, coaching is so, it's so like woo woo, it's out there. But I think the beautiful thing with coaching and all of these modalities of moving people forward to thrive in life, it's really teaching people how to change their relationship and their mindset with the things that they've been through in life.
I love it. Thank you. I really appreciate you coming and hanging out.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Melissa, put your, could we go back and then put your link inside in the comments, or if you send me the link, what I'll do is I'll put it in the description.
Okay.
But thank you very much for coming, hanging out. Your story caught me, and keep up the good work, and let's, I don't know, make this world better, 1% at a time, right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Starting with ourselves first. Thanks a lot,
Melissa. Bye-bye.